You're listening to the Governor's Podcast, which is hosted by school governors, for school governors, and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governor's Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in.
Hello, I'm Sharon Warmington and I support schools and academies as a governor, governance practitioner and a clerk. I'm also the founder of the National Black Governors Network, supporting the education sector in diversifying their governing boards.
And it's Olivia D. Hind here, an under 30, unapologetically black female who is changing the face and space of school governance.
And you're listening to the Governor's Podcast.
Okay, let's get into today's topic.
When was your last DBS check?
I would say the last time I was new to something. Do you get what I mean? Meaning like when I became a governor at my most recent school.
Okay, so you're in your second term at that school, or you're
still in my first term. It was the autumn term of 2018. So it would have been the academic year 2018-2019, which with us now being in January 2022, that sounds like a long time ago.
Yeah. So
I mean, I know mine will come back clean, but it does make you think, how regularly are they done?
Yeah.
I mean, apparently they're supposed to last 3 years, or am I hearing that from something?
There's a lot of, I'm going to say, grey area, and obviously any of our listeners, if they know factually,
then tweet us, please.
Then do let us know. But I couldn't necessarily find anything that said you must. Mm-hmm. Good governance dictates that you have a cycle. Mm-hmm. I'm not operational, so I don't know how often it happens in schools, but I'll say years ago, because I don't know whether it's still the same. I remember being in a school, not as a governor, I hasten to admit, but I think I was doing an external review of governance. And during the discussion, finding out that, some members of staff hadn't had a recheck of their DBS. Since the time that they'd started, and they'd been in the school more than 10 years.
Oh.
And I just thought at the time, that sounds weird.
You know what? I call that a risky assumption. A risky assumption that everything's fine. A risky assumption that it's not needed.
Well, the reality is a DBS, and for those who may be new to governance and don't know
what that stands for.
It is the
Disclosure and
Barring Service, and it's a check on with the police and all of this about any records that may be held on you.
Did it used to be CRB?
Yeah.
I don't know what that one stands for, but I think
Criminal Records Bureau, I think.
Oh, okay.
It was. But anybody working with vulnerable or around. And that's another thing. I'm thinking, for some schools, they want clerks to have a DBS check.
True.
I have no problem with that because I work in schools as well, and I always have a current DBS anyway, because I'm either a governor or I've got my own or I'm in a situation where I need to have one. So, but I do know clerks who only attend meetings, once the school
outside
of school hours, and they have to pay for it themselves.
Wow.
kind of thing. But I suppose the reason why I wanted to talk about this subject today is because it is a very real thing.
Yes, it is.
The reality is that you could have a check in January 2022 and it come back clean, and then in February 2022
something
happens. So is there something written down? And again, I don't know, it must be in the code of conduct, I would imagine, that if anything happens that will detrimentally affect your DBS.
You're mixing up DBS and CRB.
DBS, then you should disclose it.
Well, you would hope someone would do that.
Well, that's the thing.
Very much like, we've spoken previously about, the declarations of interest or business interests and stuff. Once something comes up, it's that transparency.
Absolutely.
Right?
But if somebody knows that they've got a criminal conviction, and it doesn't even have to be about anything
related
to do with safeguarding or anything like that. It could be, a driving offence for argument's sake. That you've been charged or banned from driving. And that would flag on your DBS check. But would you, as a governor, feel the need to disclose that?
You mean because you feel like it's
like
a
relevant
boundary? Do I need to let everyone know my business? Well,
first and foremost, you don't have not every member of the governing body knows your DBS.
Well,
they just don't. That is confidential, really, between yourself and the school, and so it's usually only one other person.
Yes.
Unless there is something adverse that comes up on there, and then there will be a discussion about that with maybe the chair or the head, to make them aware of that.
But it's not like the whole governing body knows everyone's
the whole governing
background
body
checks.
Doesn't know that. And I should say at this point, I was contacted last year, I think it was, by somebody who was interested in becoming a governor, but because of they were now in their 40s, but because of something that happened in their teenage years, that will show, because once it's on your file, it never leaves. And they were concerned that it would stop them from becoming a governor.
And yet they're a changed person.
And absolutely, they're a complete, I'm a completely different person to the person I was at 17, 18 years old. But I understand the concern. And so I personally spoke with a chair of trustees who I trust, and asked them the question, completely anonymously, obviously, if this flagged on a DBS, would it stop? Would you then not want this person to be a governor or a trustee in the trust? And they said no, because the nature of it, they recognised that this person's skills, knowledge and experience over the last 20 years,
2 decades,
right, had far outweighed something that they did as a stupid teenager kind of thing. And so for anybody who does have anything, irrespective of what it is, anything, time spent has value.
Yeah, of course.
Time spent meaning the longer it was in your past, the less you need to worry about it if it's not anything to do with finance or safeguarding, I would say. So don't let that stop you. And I know that a number of our listeners are not yet governors.
Yes.
So it's really important to make that clear. I would say own it, be honest with it before or at the point where you're completing the forms. Let them know what's going to come back.
It helps because it means that you are not trying to hide something, or you're not forcing yourself to hide something, because the more you try and hide something,
the more suspicious it can be.
Yeah, exactly. You make it bigger than it might be.
Don't think everybody knows, because they don't. I don't even think the school now knows what the exact offence is, unless they get a copy of it, if there is something that's flagged. Because I know that now, whereas in the past I know that a copy would go to the organisation and a copy to the individual.
Yes.
I think now it's only a copy to the individual.
Right. Oh, okay.
And the organisation gets notification that it's come back and it's either clear
and
or
the DBS
not.
is that not quite A4, that longish greeny purpley pinky form, right?
It's a very weird,
because it comes
certificate.
folded, right?
Yeah.
And when you open it out, I've had about 4 or 5 over my time of working with schools, because before I was a governor, I would go into schools and do workshops on personal statement writing and CV writing and confidence building, and I still do that now. I still offer those services now. So since I was probably 18, 19, I've been familiar with that, and whenever I get them, it always feels strange. It's like this whole
it doesn't
opens out. You can't put it in a plastic wallet because you're gonna bend half of it. But it's you
can't photocopy it because it's just an odd shape.
That is that doesn't make any sense to me, because if you do need to send a copy in, how clear are the details if you can't scan it or anything?
It's not very clear, but I suppose that's part of the security of not being able to forge
someone
anything.
else's.
So I do get that.
What I will say though, or what I would like to interject or mention or suggest, depending on how you look at it, is in terms of a cycle that people may be thinking, and when I say people, I mean schools or any type of business operation manager or whoever handles the DBS process for governors. One way that you can introduce the cycle of renewal or refreshing or seeing if it needs updating or anything is probably at the point of a term change. So when someone's going from doing one term for the school to a second term.
Oh, you're talking about governors now.
Governors,
right,
yeah. Because a term is 4 years. So if we know, loosely speaking, that DBSs are suggested to be updated every 3 years, then if you serve a term, then you've been there long enough to see, has anything happened in the last 4 years? It's still long, and I still definitely agree with you that you should be transparent as things come up, even if it's just to cover bases. It doesn't mean it's actually something that needs to be actioned. But I think if you just say, this happened or something happened, who do I speak to, just in case, because I just want to do the right thing.
And I would say,
so then I think at the term change point, if you're looking for a way to get into the flow of a cycle maybe then.
I would say for governors, speak to your governance professional, your clerk, where you can have a private word that doesn't have to go further than that.
Yes.
Because and I'm speaking now with my clerk's hat on, will know really quite quickly whether it's something that you need to disclose or not.
Yes. That's why you're there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would say if it's going to hit your record, i.e. if it's classed as a criminal offence, if you go to court, if it's going to hit your record at some point. It's almost like a a credit check.
Yes.
So something you could have missed payments on a credit card and not even realise that it's hit your credit check until you apply for something.
Look at that credit score,
and somebody says, "Oh, you've got a low credit score," and
they're like, "What?"
It's on there, and you're like shocked because it's like, "What are you talking about?"
And then you get the details, and you're like,
"Oh, yeah." So it's not that anybody would maliciously not disclose anything. But the reality is there are people who will break the law.
However, what I will say, even with that, with you saying for individual governors to take the responsibility to go to their clerk or their governance professional and ask questions, I'd say the one governor, outside of the chair, of course, who is likely to be a bit more familiar with governance and the things that need to be focused on, the one governor that definitely should be clear about the process of some sort at an operational level should be the safeguarding link governor, so that when you're meeting the designated safeguarding lead or the DSL of the school, you can ask these questions. You can say, how many of your long-standing members of staff, and long-standing could be anything from 3 to 10 years or more, have recently had a DBS check or had a recheck or whatever?
Because that would fall under safeguarding.
Exactly, because then when you think of what is it, the SCR, the single central record, and
the CSR.
SCR.
We're messing up our abbreviations today.
You know what? It's education. It's January, and we're just getting back into the flow of things. I still got Christmas dinner on my mind. But yeah. So I'm saying the safeguarding link, Governor, when you're meeting with the DSL, these are the kind of questions you can ask, not as like an interrogation, like you know it all and you haven't done this, but just asking the question to find out, so that you, as governors, you want to have the schools back.
Yeah.
That's what you're there to do. So if Ofsted come in and there's missing pieces of information about this staff member and this person and that person, or things haven't been updated, or people haven't been removed, and the people who have been onboarded haven't been onboarded in the right way, or the way that you collect and record information has changed, and so you've got information over here that's collected in this way and information over there collected in that way, it's at that point you can say, okay, we need to clean up this process so that any new people coming in, they are using the new process whilst we're transitioning all the current people onto the new process. And then it helps you to better identify where the gaps are.
Absolutely.
And then you can work to address those gaps. But you can't address anything if you don't first acknowledge that they exist. So I think that would be what I would say. At least the safeguarding link, Governor, should be a little bit more clued up. I'm not saying you have to fully understand what DBS means or what the process is, but just have an interest in knowing what the processes are, so that we can make sure that the school is operating the way that it should, to protect everyone in the school, but especially the children.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in schools, you know, if people are going for promotions, change of job, then that would be a good opportunity to take a new DBS
When
check.
you mean changing jobs, you mean like you
you
get a promotion?
If you're promoted within the school. I'm
become
just thinking,
a middle leader.
Because that's no different. If you make an internal appointment, the treatment should almost be the same as an external appointment. Because if somebody new was coming in to take that role,
what would you do?
You would do certain things.
Exactly.
So just because somebody is moving internally, doesn't mean that the same rules shouldn't apply.
I like that. That will really make you look at the processes of schools, because then it's thinking, then don't go for the internal candidate because the process is easier, quicker, or smoother, or whatever. It's like, no, you need to make sure the process is transparent and fair.
And I know that there is a cost for these checks.
And it takes time.
Absolutely. But the reality is, what would be the bigger cost if something went wrong?
There we go.
And you have to look at it like that. Sometimes it's not about the money.
No.
It's got to be about...
Or the time right now. It's what it will save you.
And making sure that you are covering all the bases.
Yeah, it's important.
Absolutely. I was watching a sort of drama series based on a true story around social care relating to a child's death. And you know, and the first thing when it happened and the news broke, the first thing that everybody in whatever organization involved in this child's life was doing was going back over their files to make sure that everything was in place and everything, they had done their job and did all their checks to make sure that their back is covered. So it's no different in this respect, that we make sure that we are doing what we are supposed to do within the timescales that we're supposed to do them. I think it's 14 days from appointment.
Right.
That, you know, and if you're not aware of that and your school's badgering you to come in and bring your documents in,
Yeah.
it's because there is a time scale.
Yeah, there tends
and
to be.
I know that, or I was reminded of that more recently when a parent governor was appointed, but can't start because the documents haven't, the correct documents haven't been submitted to the school.
Right.
And the bursar emailed me and said, Sharon, you know, this person can't start because the DBS is being delayed because. And I said, that's fine. You know, luckily we haven't got another governing body meeting until March. So we just push back the start date. But that's the reality. That's when you've got somebody who's on it and who knows that this can't happen until that has happened.
And this is when you have a policy or procedure or process in place and you follow it.
Yeah.
And we've spoken about this in it was probably the last season, but it was a few episodes ago when we spoke about policies and how we need to have them in place so that we know what the steps are. But if we also are doing steps and our policy is inadequate or inefficient or doesn't make sense or not up to date, then we've got to think about the changes that need to be made. So, you know, it's practicing what's written in policy, but making sure that the policy is also up to scratch. So, you know, it's following the practice that is required. So definitely something to look into, really look into. And I really like the way that you say that it's important to almost look at the internal and external aspects or candidates very openly, and also have that communication. Make it's almost like the DBS is a bit of a taboo.
Yeah, because you don't really hear about it. It's not discussed around the table at all, to be fair. I think it's one of those things that just happens in the background.
Yes. Yeah.
But and I didn't really think about it because, you know, my DBSs are always clear because I am so squeaky clean, it's squeaky clean. You know, but that's because I've been in this space for so long. I know the importance of making sure that nothing can touch,
creates a barrier or
can
hinders.
But it was when I did when we delivered that session for non-governors on how to become a governor, that it became clear to me that is one of the barriers.
It's a real concern.
People are really concerned that that things that happened in their youth, especially people, I'm going to say it from a diverse background, you know, that they feel that would hinder them, or this. It's almost like they've already told themselves, I can't become a governor because of this.
And without actually knowing it as fact.
Yeah,
there's an assumption.
There's an assumption that's the case. And so kudos to the individual who actually raised the question in that platform of nearly 600 people.
Yes.
But then the response from others was like,
oh, me too.
Me too. Or I know somebody who that's why they haven't become, because they don't want to, they feel that they can't, but they really want to do it because they've turned their life around. And one of the schools that I
the power of voice.
Is an alternative provision school. And I remember saying to them, you know, your story can be absolutely inspiring,
of course,
to young people who have come out of the system, out of mainstream, got knocked off course for whatever reason. You know, seeing you and hearing your story can absolutely change somebody's life.
Because it will be a case of even though this chapter of my life I made a mistake or something went awry, I can still make it. I can still make something of my life, of myself. I can change now. This doesn't have to be where my story ends.
Absolutely. And I know, you know, there are certain things that you can't do because of whatever's on your DBS, but a school governor, in my mind, if it was something that happened a long time ago and isn't to do with fraud or deception or anything, or safeguarding in any way, shape or form like that, then I think
at least ask the question.
Ask the question.
Raise it.
Don't make the assumption that you can't become a governor, or you are afraid to raise it because it's just happened. You know, you enjoying Christmas so much that you had drunk and disorderly is a different thing. You have to take each case on merit.
Yes, and you have to look at things in context as well.
Absolutely. So, but I would say to anybody, if something happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, don't let that stop you from giving back in a way that you really want to give back, with an assumption that this is going to affect you. And also, don't believe that the governors are going to be talking about you, because they won't know.
No, we don't know those things. I say we because being a part of a governing body, I don't know the background checks of everyone else. If anything, I only know what people present to me when you have those casual exchanges at the beginning of a meeting, or from what they share about their skills, knowledge, and expertise when you're in the meeting. Otherwise, you don't know what process they went through. You don't know unless they say it.
Absolutely.
Unless they share it.
And it's not in the interest of a school to embarrass anybody either.
No,
a school would not do that. It just wouldn't happen.
And the diverse backgrounds help the discussions to support the school, because if everyone came from the same background, they all followed the same careers, and they all lived the exact same life, then that would be a very dry board, governing body, and you ain't helping nobody. School. You're really not. Yeah. Academies would be like, okay, so where's the diverse thought, the diverse experience?
It's like saying a child who may have got excluded in year 6 cannot then be head girl or head boy in year 13 or something.
Exactly.
It's that ridiculous.
So true.
You just wouldn't do that,
because otherwise you're literally saying that one thing that happened when they were 10, 11 years old has impacted their teenage years. Like, they haven't been able to change. You don't want to break a child's imagination or aspiration. So, it's knowing that people can correct their wrongs, and people can grow through their experiences. And you're not there to police anyone, but at the same time, as you said, own it, voice it, because you don't know if there's someone else in the room saying, I'm so glad you said it, because I didn't know what to say. And that happens in meetings separate to this topic specifically. Sometimes if you have a thought or a question in your head, just ask it, because you don't know if there's 3-4 other people around the table who want to know the answer to the exact same question, but they just don't have the confidence to say it. So, it's just things like that to really think about.
Yeah, they could be working in the community, volunteering in the community, as their way of giving back, but never considered becoming governors because they feel that this cloud that's over them, which, shouldn't even be there. Absolutely.
No. And so as we've said, you've just got to own it, be transparent, and voice. And at the very least, ask the question, especially if becoming a governor is something you want to do, or something's happened and you want to continue to become a governor, and it also goes for those who are staff members as well, particularly staff members, because you're engaging with young people, vulnerable,
you've got something
adults all the time, just mention it, just let it know. People will have more respect for you for your honesty and being straight up about it than if you try and hide it or think it's not important or something. So
because it will always come out.
Exactly. So
anything in the record, anything in legal documents will come out.
And then you've got no leg to stand on if there is a disciplinary panel that takes place. You've got nothing to stand on, because then it's like, when you're asked, why didn't you mention it? Why are you going to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why are you going to say?
You've got nowhere to go. And then the trust or the distrust seed is sown.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to undo.
Exactly.
And so you can have a permanent impact on your life.
Your career,
on a temporary decision that you made.
Exactly.
So.
Oh, okay.
Any takeaways?
Yes, my takeaway would be, I think I'm going to probably speak to my clerk and ask them about the cycle of DBS, especially just thinking about the question you asked me about when was my last one. That's how you started the episode. My last one would have been, I know, especially the way lockdowns have been set up. I have been in my house, in my bedroom.
No opportunity to break
do
the
anything.
law.
Exactly. But it is worth asking, even if it's for me to be a voice for those who are not comfortable with asking or don't realize that it's a very valuable query to pose to someone.
And I think it's important because I know that you're starting some work on working with younger people to become governors.
Yes, exactly.
So it's an important conversation to
just
have.
in case someone comes into my network over the next 6 months and it's a concern that's on their mind, I will then be able to be more informed to support them in that process or getting the answers to their questions. So I think I'm going to ask the clerk or even suggest that it's something that we could potentially do, and I'd probably include maybe the chair and head in that email, because I almost see the leadership of education governance for each school or academy having 3 heads.
Yeah.
So you have the chair of the governing body, or the local governing body, you have the head of the school, and then you have the clerk who coordinates that governance process.
We're the gel.
Exactly, the nucleus,
together.
So yeah, I think I will probably construct a very simple email, a random query. I think my schools are used to me.
Another email from Olivia. What now?
Olivia's had another idea. On 20-something, very proactive governor. Here she is in my inbox again. What's she saying now? So I think I'm going to use the fact that my schools know me, my governing body knows me, and just ask the question and say, you know what? I was thinking about DBSs the other day, because that's what you do when you're 28. And I was just wondering if there's a process, and also if this is something that we could potentially monitor in a way for the actual school, and making sure that the safety of the school is there and it's regularly checked. But I think that we have a safeguarding link, governor. So in terms of that aspect, I'm very confident that it's taken care of. But yeah, that's probably what I would say. At least start the conversation and see if there's something that could be explored.
For me, I would say any governor that is serving their 2nd, 3rd, 4th or 5th term and haven't had a DBS check.
Yeah.
It's
real. It's real.
Haven't had a DBS check in the last 5-10 years.
Ooh.
Then I would say volunteer to have one.
You know why also? Because just thinking of an email I've received recently, especially if schools are encouraging governor visits again. So you are going to be in the school during the school day. So if anything, that could be your incentive. That could be your reason for why you're like, okay, now. Because meetings aren't just remotely and you're not just having them in the evening anymore. So maybe that could be, it's like, okay, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm now going to be in the school during the school day now. Maybe it's time to have it. I know it's fine, but it's still time to just put some certainty on that.
Yeah, I just really think it's important to do that.
I agree.
I mean, I've been in a position where I as I say, because of the work that I do, then I always seem to have a current DBS.
Yes, yeah.
That may be 12 or 18 months, maximum of 2 years old kind of thing. So I haven't been in that position where, I've got an out of date one or an old one. At one point it was like, they were like confetti.
Yeah, there's like 3, 4 all dated within 3-6 months of each other.
Right,
yeah.
But for those who have been serving a long time, I think just volunteer to do it.
Yeah.
I think that would also save the school some not embarrassment, but awkwardness or maybe sensitivities if you volunteer rather than they come to you and say, we'd like to do a DBS on you kind of thing.
And especially if you like to volunteer, I know we're extending the episode a bit, but if you get your DBS sorted through the school, then it means if you're someone who goes into schools outside of your governance role, you may volunteer to be a part of a careers event. It means that if you do need to provide a DBS, you can provide an updated one. So, it's twofold. It's not just something you're doing for your governance role. It could actually benefit you in something you're applying for, or something that you want to be a part of.
Or one-off ad hoc thing that is nothing to do with your school, but that may require that kind of thing. Because I've done that as well. I've been part of interview days.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
schools,
I was thinking about.
And and I've shown my current DBS to that school because logistically they haven't got the time or the finance to get a DBS for each. But it means in that situation, it's like, okay, we've got something on you that is within a, almost like when you have to submit ID and it's got to be within 3 months of the date you're applying for something or whatever to make it valid. You can't produce a bill that was
5 years old
2 years ago.
I went further.
And expect them to say, oh yeah, that's fine kind of thing. It doesn't work like that. So
so those are our takeaways. Check your DBS check.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governor's Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governor's Podcast. Let's connect.